Thank you all. I should be standing here with my cohort, my wife, but she does not have COVID. But our cat has COVID, or a kitten that we rescued. And luckily, kitten COVID is not the same as human COVID. But anyways, that's what's great about virtual. So welcome. I'd like to start with a simple example. Imagine you can attend a Broadway show any day of the week from anywhere in the world at a price you can afford and have the best seats in the house. Now also imagine that the community of artists, producers, and crew that put this whole show together have united, and issues such as gender, diversity, capabilities, all of that is turned into case studies in the history books. That's what we imagine. We want to empower artists to uplift humanity, and we've given ourselves till the year 2030 to do so. Let's look at how it currently works. The model on Broadway has been the same for almost 100 years, in that if you are an artist and you have a show, you usually start with something called a table read or a reading where you sit around and you develop the story. We'll do thousands of those a year, and we'll spend anything from snacks to roughly anywhere from $10,000 to $75,000 once it gets to the last reading stage to where you're now showing it off in front of people. If you're lucky enough to move forward, well then we as producers or as a director will raise more money and you'll take that number of shows down. And now you're starting to spend anywhere in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in a small theater or a small dance studio, usually in New York, where a bunch of people sit around and do this and decide whether you can move forward or not. And if you get lucky enough to move forward, well then now a few shows go and they'll get an out-of-town tryout at one of the glorious regional theaters. And you as a producer need to go raise more money, and now you've raised another $1 million to $3 million. All the way along, the artists that have been writing this have not earned a living wage to make it 5 years. Producers are spending money without any data to really know if that show is going to work. But you do have the Caesar's thumbs up, thumbs down, and should you get that thumbs up, you get to the Broadway. And now it's 7 years later, and about 20 new shows come. That's because there's 41 total theaters. And of those 41 total theaters, many of them have the Hamiltons and Wickeds and the Phantoms in them. So there's only so many spaces. Definitely a resource constraint. And if you make it and you are able to raise the $20, $30 million to put on the show, you are lucky enough to have an 85% chance of losing all your money. Now, I'm also in the venture capital world besides the Broadway producing and directing world, and I kid my venture capitalist friends because they say, oh, our world is so tough. And I say, yeah, you want to lose a lot of money? Come our way. Now, once you get to Broadway, though, you can make money on it because now it's branded, and now it can be done in high schools, regionals, you can tour it, sometimes it's turned into a film. And so we looked at this and said, it literally does not work for anybody unless you happen to be somebody like a Lin-Manuel Miranda who has made it big, or a Stephen Schwartz, or an Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's a very small group of people that are getting to do their craft. Thus, we said, how do we make a change from this linear model of 7 years, spending a lot of money, and losing it all? Well, if it wasn't bad enough, then we know what happened during these years when we came to a complete shutdown. And not only did the final shows that have made it the 7-year shutdown, think of an airline when there's or the airport when there's a big storm and all the planes are lined up. Well, that's what happened to the whole developmental queue for shows. Almost everything stopped dead in its track. This was our year in 2021. I happened to be lucky enough to be part of Maven Ventures and invest in the first round of Zoom, so I've been using it forever. And I became everybody's best friend, because we still needed to do live events. Mostly I was doing large charity fundraisers, celebrity-driven events, and I got to train a lot of amazing people how to use Zoom, including Stevie Wonder and Kenny G, and just, boy, the list goes on. So it was a joyous time, and many people said, well, I can't do another boring Zoom event. And I agree, I don't want to do a boring Zoom event either. Well, we treated it like the medium it was, and we used our theatrical concepts and constructs that we all know to do the best we could, and in many cases, it was very inspiring events. But more importantly, it showed how fast our artistic environment could adapt, like the putting on a show when you had to a challenge. I spoke on this stage 5 years ago saying that 5 years from now we would be using more of this XR technology in Broadway. And I've been saying that about every 5 years since the 90s. And I really feel like we're 5 to 7 years away right now because of what we had to go through and people's willingness to look at, well, what are other options in the entire process, not just the final distribution process. And to me, that's the big changer. Okay, so what are we doing? This is my wife, who should be up here on the stage with me. She was the original Rapunzel in Into the Woods on Broadway, as well as the feather duster in Beauty and the Beast, Babette. So yes, I did marry a feather duster. So she comes from the artistic side of things, as well as she's now been forced to adopt the technology side of piece. So during the pandemic, one of our alums from a program we ran, she became one of the first actors to really wear every gadget and try everything, and then now she's training other actors. And she also drove the Enterprise, so she has the tech cred to make it through the way. Me, yes, I did perform in musicals before moving into directing and producing, but I also began in a rock band in LA. That's our reunion tour that we did up there. And I was a filmmaker. That's my senior project in high school, where we convinced our English teacher, instead of writing a paper, because we've just finished our SAT, or not SAT, AP tests, that we will make a film. Because I was going to go to SC Film School until I saw how expensive SC Film School was, and went to the University of California system in Irvine and got a computer science degree. So I have always lived this dual life, and out of college I founded a tech company called IT Mentors, where we built large-scale systems, but we also did training. And I was constantly in the tech world bringing in artistic elements, and in my artistic world, I was always trying to bring in tech elements, until today, where we've aligned, where you need both to succeed. And when I was working on the Broadway World, started producing in 2008 and 9 and 10 and doing shows that I'll show you here in a moment. I got close with the Schubert organization. Very traditional, go back to that 1919 organization structure. And one particular person, Kyle Wright, and I said, we need an accelerator that's going to help these tech companies that are going to provide infrastructure from early ideation of a show all the way to managing the mundane ticket sales and analytics and marketing to create a more future thinking system. So we've merged all of these pieces together now. So these are the shows I've done, 3 Broadway musicals. We've made 2 feature films. And in those feature films, we used a digital model first, where instead of spending millions, we limited it to the hundreds of thousands of dollars, all Broadway actors into a theater, shooting it film-like digitally without ever putting in an audience. And so we have taken shows and we're now pipelining them through as a mechanism to start earning revenue for all of the artists, because they can stream it and now they can license it because it's been branded. So we're always looking at what we have traditionally as we move things forward. This is through our foundation. We created a nonprofit, Apples and Oranges Arts, and there was an idea that we had back at a TED conference in 2016 to treat artists like entrepreneurs. And we said, let's create our version of Y Combinator and 500 startups for Broadway. Thought it was a great idea. We would pay all the artists, they'd get health insurance, and we would take a small percentage that would go back into the fund to help other artists. Well, I was at a conference, and I was going to name the conference, but I won't, with a bunch of other people from my industry, and just got all the reasons why this wasn't going to work. And the main reason was they said, artists don't want to be entrepreneurs. Artists want us to handle that for them. And they weren't saying this in a mean way, like I'm so smart. They really believed that they wanted the agents, the managers, the producers, the blah, 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 to do all that. Like, artists only wanted to be on the creative. And I disagreed. I said, they're creative. Why wouldn't they want to look at all of the opportunities? So we just gave it away. We open sourced it. We paid for the whole thing through our nonprofit. We fund artists for 2 weeks, but we make them use technology, and we make them think about themselves as entrepreneurs. And it's been absolutely game-changing, mind-blowing for us and for our community, to where nobody doubts it anymore. In fact, it's just the opposite. Now we're looking at new ways that we can bring technology into the foray. In our last class that just ended, we end with a fun thing called Sing Tank, where they pitch to investors. We gave every team a headset, and we had them virtualize parts of their show in process so that they could start to think about the life cycle of creation and how you can shrink it down from that 7 years into more like a 1 to 2 year monetization strategy. And these were the shows. You can take a look at them pitching on our YouTube channel if you want to see artists talking about new realities. All of this work that we did led us into launching our venture studio and corresponding fund to create what we're calling right now the Broadverse. Now, broad, yes, is for the Broadway side of it, but also thinking much more broadly, meaning don't think that your content has to be linear or one size fits all. The verse, yes, the traditional verse that we think of, but adding on the idea that you're building a story universe. And as we look to the future, where in the beginning we talk about the ability to do what you want to as an artist or an audience member, we know we need to get ourselves there. And so how we're going to get there in the path, we don't want to die along on the path as our evolution to when you can actually sit for 2 to 3 hours comfortably and watch something, because we're not there yet. You are limited to the 30 to 45 minutes. And thus, we said, let's just do it. That's how I'm wired. And so we said, if you take the 7 years, that's why we're saying Broadway 2030. I'm giving myself 7 years and a few months. And normally I can do one show in that and spend a chunk of money. For that same amount of money, I now need to be able to, in this studio model, take and design our assets and start to look at distributing them during the traditional types of ways that we would build things. And then bring that into game engines like Unity or Unreal and design these virtual assets. So it's a matter of training traditional theater people, bringing tech people and putting them together. And now once you have these assets, you can use them, why we say in our opening statement, building it now and before, you can use traditional means to start generating revenue. Because take, for example, you've built this beautiful 360 world, and in the theatrical world, we might put that up on projections using Watch Out or Disguise. Well, Disguise, as you all know, has this amazing XR capability that you can also use in film with with a volume structure with LED walls. Why not be creating the underlying assets that can work A, B, C, and eventually we're banking all this stuff for when you can watch it fully in the metaverse. So for now, we're funding projects that we may or may not sell tickets to. I love the earlier presentation from OpenXR talking about how people were willing to pay $20 for something sight unseen to just enjoy this experience. So we know that there is a monetization strategy, but we're not banking on that right now. We're banking on the future to bring us there. Once we get there, yay. Now, for that same amount of money that I would have spent to do one show, I can do roughly anywhere from 10 to 15 shows and also fund or at least incubate some technology glue companies, as we call them. Those integrators that are going to help figure out the FBXs to the DMXs to the EIEIOs and whatever else acronyms that need to be thrown out to make all of this work. We need the ability to fund and deliver all of that. So through our nonprofit, we launched this for the people in our community, and especially at the high school and college levels, where we're taking everything we learn and we're just putting it up in blogs and videos and TikToks and you name it, so that people can get out there and start doing it. Come join with us. This is a lot of fun we're having on it, and we're trying different ideas. And again, we're funding different aspects as they come to test out anything that we haven't done. Well, here's one of our first case studies. So through our theater accelerator, we took some shows through that had amazing trajectories and did stuff. Well, we wanted to do the same. This show right here, Winter Lights, was initially designed to be a traditional stage show at the Discovery Cube, which is a science center in Orange County. And we did the reading for it in February of 2020. Do the math. It was supposed to run in December of 2020. And even though some of my friends said, oh, well, we'll be back up over the summer, I knew there's no way. I mean, anybody that knows exponential growth knew that we were headed for a lot of pain. And so the show was technically dead. So instead, we built it in virtual reality. I was one of the early people on in alt space, and I've always wanted to build a musical in alt space, so we built it in alt space. And we set a limit to say, let's not try to make everything photoreal. Let's actually work on the story. Let's take assets that we can either buy or the ones that we have to build. Let's not go insane. Let's just cap them at thousands of dollars, not hundreds of thousands of dollars, so that we can get the show ready. So we did. We were doing things in alt space that even the team didn't know how we were doing it, and it was just making it do more than it was ever designed to, but we did develop the story. And the story's ready now. It's a VR experience that we haven't released publicly because we're gonna do a few more things to it on the VR side, but the show is now scheduled and slotted to go in November and December live this year, and those same assets are going to be the projections in the show, everything that we talked about. So it worked. We shrunk the time, we shrunk the investment. We have another example here. Oh, actually, here's a quick little bit from the show.
So close, so close. It's so close to being right. If I find the strength somewhere from deep inside, I'll keep this dream alive. You're not alone, not at all. Children and ideas turn from small to tall. You're not alone. Growth is good, even though the process can be misunderstood. Not the end, but a beginning. Every time you miss a turn, it's the way you handle obstacles that in the end you learn. The way we make things better is through knowledge that we share. There's just one reason anything has meaning. When you're not sure why, look to the sky.
And that's actually a quick replica of where it's going to play. Thank you. All of that was done in 6 weeks, and a little bit of prep on either side of it too. None of the actors had ever been in headset except for my wife. And so we drop shipped quests to everybody. Nobody saw each other because we were in the height of a complete lockdown. And we were using things from our industry like QLab that was pumping through a sound device that was going into a headset that if you looked at the office, it looked like Frankenstein was about to come jumping out from being electrocuted. But it worked, and that was really the key. And yes, there's issues of latency and all the things that we've talked about, and we know that we're going to be able to solve those pieces. Another perfect example is this next piece came through our theater accelerator, and the show itself takes place after the assassination of Martin Luther King at a peace rally in Memphis, Tennessee. The artists were struggling to really find what they wanted the show itself to be, so I said, let's build the prequel. So we've built this, and it's about 2 weeks from being finished, and we're going to start releasing it, where we are putting you into that moment in Dr. Martin Luther King's last march down Beale Street. And we take you first into current day Beale Street so that you can see what caused that march that they went through, and then also the ramifications that came after it. So in that process, the artist really thought through what's the theme, what do they want to tell? And so now we have a prequel experience, and we're in the works right now in the actual show itself. So in summary, we look at it multiple different ways, but really for us, the key is to look at XR as the binding glue that allows us to take what would normally take multiple years and many dollars to greatly accelerate the process and getting multidisciplinary people communicating and working together. At this point, I usually get asked all the time, are you trying to kill live theater? The answer is absolutely not, and every piece of data says that the more we engage people virtually, the more they also want to come back and do it live. And so we just show them the data, and luckily even people that used to be the naysayers in the large organizations like the theater owners in New York fully agree, and they're behind this too. So what we do need to do is to take that linear process that we talked about and break down as many of those dotted lines and gatekeepers as we can. And that's our goal, is to make it accessible and uplift as many people as we can through theater. So thank you very much. Thank you. Looks like we have a few minutes for questions. Yes?
From what I can tell, it seems like the broad verse, the broadness of it, you're not specifically focusing on a specific platform. You're opening up to whatever the modality is that best tells the story. Can you talk about what that's like and how you work with the artist to find the right platform for them?
Exactly. So the first part of the question of we are not limited to one platform. We are looking at all different types of platforms and how we work with the artists. The answer is we always start story and theme. Like, what is it that you're trying to get across with your story? And then what is it you want from your audience? One thing I didn't talk about too much here is how active / passive / engaged / agency, all those words that we use, do you want the audience to be? So for example, we knew in Winter Lights that we were going to bring an older generation Science Center board members into the experience so they could see it. None of them had used a headset. So we anchored them at first. We built a theater, and we put them in the theater seats, and for the first half of the show, they just sat and watched. And then halfway through the show, we blew up the seats, and they had to travel along with the characters. Not surprisingly, people that already did VR experiences loved the second half, and people that hadn't were like, oh, that was too much. And so that's why I like looking at what you're doing and what other people are doing. We see ourselves as glue to help people find different pieces and to experiment in that line, because it's not a one-size-fits-all, as we all know. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, another one over here.
Are you more interested in bringing audiences into these platforms for the first time, or are you trying to engage the folks who are already on an alt space? And when there is this, both the physical installation and the virtual installation, how do they communicate, and where's the handoff between how they advertise the different parts of the show that are going on?
Sure. When it comes to audience, the current people that are in VR, and okay, this is the capitalist Broadway producer in me, says it's about this big. Like, it's not sustainable to do at the level that we want to do. However, that audience has been doing this for a long time, and you can learn a massive amount from that audience. So they are, just like you do an out-of-town tryout, they're like your early adopters. Now, my goal, though, is the masses. When you look at how the evolution of, say, traditional movies where you've gone from theater to where TV was going to kill theater and then streaming was going to kill this, and everything always is going to kill. It never kills, really. There's changes and things morph. So I look at, my focus is truly on the broad scheme. Now, how do we bring them in and activate them in the different pieces? It's a hybrid between meeting them at what they know, but not doing only what they know. Like, you have to think about, we spend so much time on onboarding because the quickest way to lose somebody is in the first 5 or 10 minutes. Thinking about how you can remove stress and fear when they want to attend one of these pieces is paramount to everything that we're doing. Because once, well, you've all said it in different things, like once somebody's come in and had this emotional connection once, that's all it takes, they'll put up with so much more problems after they've had one good experience. All right. Well, my little timer's done, so I think, oh, we do, okay.
I was wondering, if you could give a little bit of background on why sort of the original sort of Broadway model is this 7-year like cycle, and that there haven't been better cheats, even with just, simple find a stage, do it, film it, like that there isn't a quicker way to go from 0 to 7 years is, I come from the indie film background,
Yeah.
and short little screenplay outline, fuck it, let's do it. I was able to get something off the ground in 2 months and 50 grand, and we actually just made the film. And it's doesn't seem like with a play, it seems like if you can get the right people, of course there's a big investment. If you're going to go to Broadway, it's going to be bigger sets and the rest. But how to get buy-in, it seems like it shouldn't have to take 7 years.
Yeah, and 7 is an average. You will have some that get there sooner, some that 15. In the theatrical world, you'll have things like fringe festivals and other amazing ways for people to get together and collaborate. It's just that the monetization structures on those are so incredibly low that nobody can make any money from it. So to your point, we took the film model, and those 2 films that we made, one of them, Emma, we initially were going to take to Broadway. When I ran the numbers, looked at the available theaters, looked at who we could get in it, we just couldn't make it financial sense. So that one, instead of doing it off-Broadway for $1 million, we filmed it for $200,000. It's now licensed and being done by Musical Theater International all over the world. So we actually borrowed exactly from what you're saying, the independent film market. Will that show come to Broadway someday? Maybe. But even if it doesn't, the artist and the structure that we put together and the entire creative team all made some money, and we got a piece of art out into the world that is now generating revenue for artists. So I want to take what you've talked about with the independent filmmaking world, the best of the theatrical world, and what we do in XR, and see how we can even get more product out there faster and let the audience make it their own. I mean, we could do a whole session on when you look at just what's happening on TikTok and some of the other social platforms where these creators are using tools there to get stuff out faster than anything that we've ever seen. So it's an incredibly valid point.
Fantastic. Let's give him one more round of applause.